Why don't we get into some hockey? And a lot of people early this week were surprised when a story came out that the Islanders are parting ways with Barry Trotz. Now, I've always believed that Barry Trotz has been the best coach in the NHL, I would say about 7 years. He's one of the winningest coaches in NHL history, came to the Islanders 4 years ago, and really changed this organization into a winning franchise. Now, over the last year, with the new stadium, COVID situations, the Islanders really started the season off very, very slow. Traveling about 11,000 miles the first month of the season with no home games. After they lost 8 or 9 players to COVID in the middle of the season, it definitely affected them when they lost 11 games in a row. I do not believe Barry Trotz got fired because of where they ended up this season. Back-to-back years to an Eastern Conference championship. This organization has been as dominant as any hockey organization in the last 4 years. And a lot of people's favorite to winning the Stanley Cup this year. And after all that, the Islanders part way with their head coach. Now, when Lou Lamoriello spoke at the press conference, Lou Lamoriello would not give any answers on why he decided to part ways with Barry Trotz. I believe it's a lot more in depth that we probably won't know until maybe Lou Lamoriello wants to write a book or Lou Lamoriello completely retires as a GM and steps away from hockey, which could be soon because he's 80 years old. I believe Lou Lamoriello wants to move another path to where he believes this team can transition into a Stanley Cup contender. Now, with their defense this year and the additions that they made with Zach Parise and Chara, it really didn't work. Now, going into the offseason, the Islanders have some money. They're going to have to pay Noah Dobson. They're going to have to decide if they want to trade certain players like a Josh Bailey, Bolivier, even Varlamov. What they do know is they have a very good all-around defensive team. They have a great young goaltender that played sensational this year, was a very big bright spot for them this year. But they need to find offense. And Barry Trotz's system teaches you to think defense, then offense. Barzal is coming up on his final year of his 3-year contract that he signed 2.5 years ago. If you were an Islander fan and you're worried to lose Barzal in free agency, the Islanders need to figure out how to get this kid moving where he is excited if he decides to sign a new contract with the New York Islanders. Right now, if you're an Islander fan, you're probably shocked. You're probably wondering if Lou knows what he's doing, just like all the Yankee fans were wondering if Brian Cashman knew what he was doing. You don't question a GM that's been successful everywhere he's gone as an NHL GM. Lou Lamoriello, not this year, but the last 2 years has been GM of the year. He knows what he is doing. Now, does it shock you that he fired a great coach like Barry Trotz? Yes. Am I upset about it? A little bit. Do I think Barry Trotz is the end-all, be-all, and he's the only way the Islanders are going to win a Stanley Cup? And the answer is no, Speedy.
I don't think it's the end-all, be-all because of the way they've built their team. Now, definitely shocking. I agree with you. I think there's something that we don't know about that has not been revealed yet of Barry Trotz's decision. I think it could be something off the ice, maybe a different city. But Lou Lamoriello, he's too smart to just impulsively fire a coach like Barry Trotz just on a down season where they had all those issues, like the distance travel with the COVID, all that stuff. I think there is something more behind the scenes. The Islanders, the one thing they really need is team speed. I don't know if that's something you could just find in another coach like Barry Trotz, maybe Peter Laviolette, if Washington does end up parting ways with him. But if
could happen.
Otherwise, yeah, maybe a younger coach that...
That's where I think they're going to go. They're going to go with a younger coach. I think they're going to go with a guy that has been in this league, actually has some kind of affiliation with a guy like Lou Lamoriello, maybe one of his old players. I've mentioned Scott Niedermayer, a guy that I think is a very smart guy, has been a successful Hall of Fame player. I could see Lou Lamoriello bringing in a guy that never coached ever.
He only just retired recently. What about a guy like Patrick Elias?
Yeah, absolutely. I could see him bringing a band of ex-Devils to come in and help rebuild a team that has had very good success under Barry Trotz. But again, the Islanders are really considerably young with some of their young stars. Wahlstrom is young. Barzal is young. Dobson, he's young. Aho is young. Pelech is still fairly young, 26 years old. Pulak, 26, 27 years old. These are all veteran but young players that you can win for the next couple of years. And consistency is what Lou wants to see. And yes, they went to back-to-back Eastern Conference Championship games. But again, they didn't get over the hump, and it wasn't enough. And I think Lou wants to find somebody that's going to get them into that Stanley Cup game where they're going to be able to compete against the best. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know if you're an Islander fan today and saying that we, as an organization, are better off without Barry Trotz. I would say no. But again, you cannot go against Lou Lamoriello and what he has done as a president and as a GM in the NHL.
The way of thinking could be changing is maybe Barry Trotz was instilling enough in that defense where they could trust him on their own, not to be necessarily consistently number one, but at least be top 10 or even above average with an offensive coach that could help that side of the puck too.
The press has interviewed Doug Weight, and Doug Weight pretty much said, if Lou is firing you, especially the way he fired Barry Trotz, there has to be more in depth of something that happened within the team. He wouldn't just fire you out of the blue. Right. So I don't think we'll ever know why Lou decided to part ways with Barry Trotz until he's ready to talk about it. And it might not be for a very, very long time. Or it might never happen. Maybe Lou promised Barry that he will not tell anybody on why he's firing him so he can find himself another job. Who knows what's going on with the Islanders organization, but the Islanders are going another route. Where they go, we'll probably find out as the playoffs continue moving forward. As far as the NHL lottery draft, the Devils are in the top 5 again. It doesn't make any sense, but it looks like the NHL just wants to keep letting the rich get richer. As they got Jack Hughes a couple of years ago as the number 1 pick, a couple of years before that, they had the number 1 pick too,
yeah,
right?
2017.
And now they have the number 2 pick in the draft, where this draft is not as talented as all the other drafts we've just talked about, but there are 6 really dominant players in this year's draft. So the Devils are going to have their pick, besides the number 1 pick, where they can get a very good, very talented player to this roster that's really loaded with some young talent.
They need Lou Lamoriello to save them. They've only made 1 playoff appearance amidst all that.
Well, that's because of their coach, who is absolutely horrible.
Well, they've gone through all horrible coaches, and it just doesn't work for them.
As far as the Islanders are concerned, they landed where they were supposed to be drafting, and that's number 13. Where Lou decides to go at 13, they could use that as a trade piece to add another superstar player to come and play with Barzal. Who knows what Lou is going to do? Right now, if the season were to end, the Islanders would have $13 million to spend. If they trade Varlamov and they get rid of maybe 1 or 2 contracts, they might have a little bit more than that. They still have to give Noah Dobson an extension this offseason. They're going to have to re-sign Aho, who's probably going to want $3 million, $4 million a year. Dobson's a young, talented young player where I believe he's going to get himself at least $5 million a year. So all in all, I think the Islanders will have between $8 and $9 million to spend in the offseason where they can add another piece. The question is, where do they go when it comes to that piece? So it's going to be a very interesting offseason. As far as the NHL playoffs, the New York Rangers really started this series with the Penguins really, really slow. And they haven't been scoring goals in this series against a third-string goalie. And Shesterkin has not been good. A Hart Trophy finalist, a Vezina Trophy finalist as the best goalie in the NHL. He is one of the reasons why the Rangers are here in the playoffs. But what he has done so far in the playoffs has showed me that he is not a pressured type of goalie. Now, I know it's early in his career. This is his first time in the playoffs. But I can name a lot of goaltenders that first time in the playoffs that did a lot better than a guy like Igor Shesterkin. I don't know if you can judge him because of one series. Now, if the Rangers somehow win Game 7 and knock off the Pittsburgh Penguins, which would be a great comeback, being down 3-1. It's sensational comeback, but that has a lot to do when they're playing against a backup goalie who has been horrible. And that 4th deciding goal in game number 6 was horrible. If I were the Pittsburgh Penguins for game number 7, I don't care how unhealthy Jari is, you put him in that game. You cannot trust in a third-string goalie. Now, Jari, is he that much better than Domingue? Probably not, but I would trust in a guy that has done it really all season long than a guy that really has been a filling goaltender as a third-string goalie. But the Rangers tied. It's going to the 7th game of the series.
Yeah, Shesterkin has not looked his best. He hasn't made a lot of those spectacular, tough saves that we've seen him do throughout the regular season. He has had a couple soft goals, usually 1 or 2 a game.
He's been pulled in 2 games.
Right, when he's looked off. And that's a big problem for a Rangers team that needs that kind of goaltending to step up in order to make a difference. It's a young team all around. And I also think the games in Pittsburgh, the offensive game planning was really flawed. I think they were taking Domingue for granted. Yeah, he's nothing special, but they were shooting at bad angles. They were shooting kind of impulsively, and that did not help. We know in any sport, if you have bad offense, it'll lead to bad defense. If your defense is on the field for 45 minutes in football, it'll get worn out. In basketball, if you turn the ball over a ton, you get all these fast break points against you. Same kind of thing in hockey, and you're seeing that. The Penguins are possessing the puck forever. Now, the Rangers have made some adjustments. Game 5, they looked a lot better offensively. Now, granted, the Crosby injury might have something to do with it.
Had nothing to do with it.
But they were winning more face-offs. I think that did end up helping, and then same same thing in Game 6, too.
You and all the other Ranger fans gave up on your team early in this series. Every Ranger fan said after it went 3-1, the series is over. When I said there's no way this series is over because you have a third-string goalie who looks horrible in some aspects of the game. The fact that the Rangers lost 3 games in this series is pretty remarkable. Now they're going into a Game 7. A lot of people would pick the Rangers to win this game. Now, if Jari plays, I would give maybe a little advantage with the Penguins, but being that the Rangers have the home crowd, I think Ranger fans should be very excited. I don't think it's going to be exciting where if you have to play the Bruins or you have to play the Carolina Hurricanes. Right. If the Rangers win this series and come back, I think it's a successful season because they're going to be playing 2 really strong teams like the Carolina Hurricanes and the Boston Bruins. Now, they're going to a Game 7 too. The Hurricanes have played well. All the home teams have won. Yep. And now they're going back to Carolina. When you look at the Eastern Conference, I expected the Rangers to win. I expect the Hurricanes to win their series. But out of all the series in the Eastern Conference, I thought the Bruins and the Hurricanes was going to be the more exciting series because I really think the Bruins could beat anybody.
Their question, too, was a lot of the goaltending because they had 2 young goalies all at once who had pretty similar stat lines, too, and pretty similar levels of experience. And you could definitely tell the takeover with Swayman has been a lot better, where the team has played better around him for the Bruins. The defense has been a lot better throughout. Their defensive depth was a big question mark coming in. And also, they're getting goal scoring from outside the guys on their top line, but also their top line guys are dominating, kind of like you saw with the Penguins as well. So they have definitely the veteran experience advantage with the Hurricanes having the pressure, but the Hurricanes have the home ice and the much more talent.
And as far as the Western Conference is concerned, Avalanche, St. Louis, that's going to be a fun series to watch. I'm not surprised that the Avalanche and the Blues are moving on. I thought the Blues were the better team in their series against Minnesota, and obviously the Avalanche have been the most talented team throughout this season. Even though the Panthers had the best record throughout the league, I think the Avalanche has the most talent out of all the teams in the playoffs. I expect Calgary to beat Dallas, even though this series is very...
This is the low-scoring series.
Yeah, it's neck and neck, that series. I think the Flames will win that series. I think they're very fast, they're very talented, very young. You look at Kachuk, you look at Goudreau. This is a good offensive team that has great all-around talent throughout defense and offense. And as far as the Oilers series, I expect the Oilers to win because if they get knocked off by the LA Kings, a team that shouldn't have made the playoffs, nobody thought they were going to make the playoffs. They're a rebuilding team. If they lose against them, I think you're going to have to decide what you're doing in the offseason. Either trade Draisaitl or somebody to really get this team back in order because this team has been too talented to be knocked out early in the playoffs. We've seen year after year after year.
I'm annoyed at myself because I actually had the Blues as the West final pick at the start of the season to go to the Stanley Cup. And then I deviated from it. I really liked the way Minnesota played this year. I thought Minnesota was going to have a little bit of a letdown, and I picked them. And the Blues show why their playoff adversity, their toughness really showing.
They could beat the Avalanche.
I think they will, too, because their defense has really shown a lot. I thought a lot of the losses they had to trade away guys after their Cup team, including their captain and Pietrangelo, who's now with Vegas. I thought that would hurt them. It seemed like throughout the year, they were allowing a lot of 7-5 games. I was seeing a lot of them, so I didn't trust them against a team as offensively deep as Minnesota, but they really rallied back. They were down 2-1 in that series and fought back. I think they could definitely beat them because Colorado's sitting for a while, too. That tends to hurt teams in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's usually a good thing for basketball, not as much for hockey. And the Avalanche, that's been their trouble in the second round. As far as the Flames and the Stars, I had Dallas in the upset initially. The Flames are very talented, too. If they do beat Dallas and they go advance, I think they could make a deep, deep run.
Here's my predictions in the Eastern Conference. I think the Maple Leafs knock off the Lightning.
Ooh, spicy upset. There you go.
I want to see the Bruins knock off the Hurricanes, but I still think the Hurricanes are too talented to be knocked off.
I got Carolina.
I got Carolina, and I got the Rangers knocking off the Penguins.
I think if Crosby doesn't come back, I'll take the Rangers. If Crosby does, I'll take the Penguins.
I don't think Crosby's coming back. Calgary knocking off Dallas, and Oilers knocking off the LA Kings.
I got to stick with the upset with Dallas. I went with it. I'll go with the Oilers, though, too.